Sport New Zealand to provide support to facilitate the resolution of the dispute between Netball New Zealand and Dame Nolene Taurua. This is a particular case of recent occurrence. The Minister of Sport is not responsible for the resolution of the dispute, but is responsible for directing Sport New Zealand. The bar for an urgent debate is a high one. I do not think that issuing such a direction to a Crown entity is a matter that warrants setting aside the business of the House. The application is declined. We come now to oral questions. The first in the name of the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by all of his government's statements and actions?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. Has he or any government minister requested or received advice on limiting the right to strike for any government workforces? If so, what was the nature of that advice?
We respect the union's right to strike. We also encourage them to think about the impact they're having on kids, parents and patients.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I asked the Prime Minister whether or not he or any of his ministers had requested or received advice on limiting the right to strike.
Prime Minister might like to make a further comment.
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr Speaker, so why did Simeon Brown say that limiting the right of doctors to strike was something the government would consider?
He talked about the fact that actually we want doctors to consider the rights of parents, patients and kids. He said that ultimately we need to balance the right to strike and actually making sure we protect the interests of other New Zealanders. That is something that he said we may ultimately consider, but I'd just say to that member and to all your friends in the unions, encourage them to get back round the bargaining table. Let's negotiate tomorrow.
Mr Speaker, so how is it in the interests...
Just wait for your own team to...
How is it in the interests of parents, patients and kids for the government to offer public sector workers, like teachers, doctors, nurses and others, pay increases that are less than the rate of inflation, so amount to a real terms pay cut, and not address the workload issues that they have been raising?
Well, that's just not true. What we have said is that we expect teachers to be able to come around the bargaining table and negotiate with their employer, the Public Service Commissioner, and actually do the negotiation there. But again, there are offers that have been extended to the unions that haven't been taken out to members. Asking teachers to consider whether they could do their professional development and their teacher-only days in one of the 12 weeks of school holidays is not an unreasonable request. Having a discussion about a Palestinian state from a teachers' union is not a priority about improving attendance or education outcomes for New Zealanders.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Why didn't the government increase eligibility for the game development rebate, given the current $40 million budget for the rebate isn't being fully utilised?
Well, again, I'm very proud of the progress that's been made in the gaming sector under this government. I think when I looked at the numbers a few months ago, and don't hold me to account, but the 38% increase in the size of the gaming sector, I think it actually hit something like $780 million in the last year, which is fantastic.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Why isn't he aware that the gaming sector has grown 86% in the last 2.5 years since the gaming rebate was introduced by the previous Labor government, and his government, despite repeated requests from the sector, has not been willing to expand eligibility so that the budget that was set aside for it actually gets spent?
Isn't it great? We're getting a question on the third Labor policy of this week, but we didn't get one for the 1 and 2. And this is really the big deal that's going to move the needle from Labor. I'd just say getting in behind backing fast track, public-private partnerships, roads of national significance, NCA changes. Those are things that we want to hear from the Leader of the Opposition on.
Parliamentary question, Mr Speaker. Can he name one other sector of the New Zealand economy that's grown by 86% in the last 2.5 years? And if he can't, why isn't he willing to back the sector that is?
We are backing the sector. That's why it's so great to see the growth that's taken place in the sector. But it's also why we're backing farmers, because actually their dairy's up 14%, red meat's up about 9%, and horticulture's up 19%. That's fantastic result, record results in our primary industry sectors. And again, I just encourage the member to support what the government's doing to free and liberate our farmers who are treated as villains and are deeply, deeply valued.
Supplementary.
Supplementary. Dr Shane Retty.
Thank you. Is the Prime Minister aware of the recent gaming sector review where some businesses saw, quote, increasing the number of grants available through code as the most effective lever for further development, unquote?
Yes, I am, and I appreciate the work that the member's doing to actually improve our science sector and to actually encourage more startups across a range of technology sectors in this economy.
Question number 2, Cameron Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what recent reports has she seen on the economy?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr Speaker, this morning the New Zealand Superannuation Fund published its latest annual report. It shows that the super fund's total size was $85 billion at 30 June 2025, with average return since its inception of 10.1% per annum.
Supplementary. How does the super fund compare to other government-owned investment funds?
Mr Speaker, while different countries' funds have their own approach to investment, there are a number of common practices. These funds and their investment companies typically buy and sell a range of assets, diversify their portfolio, including by investing internationally, seek to generate strong long-term financial returns for their investor base, actively manage risk, and reinvest their profits to ensure fund growth and sustainability over time.
Supplementary. Does the super fund sell assets, and do other government-owned investment funds sell assets?
Mr Speaker, yes and yes. Funds sell assets and they buy other assets. For example, just to take a random example, when Temasek was established in Singapore in 1974, its initial portfolio of 354 million Singaporean dollars comprised shares in companies, startups and joint ventures previously held by the Singapore government. This included, I'm advised, a bird park, a hotel, a detergent producer, a startup airline and an iron and steel mill. Of the 35 companies in Temasek's initial portfolio, only 10 still remain, directly or indirectly. That means that less than 30% of their original seed assets are retained by them today. I'm talking about Temasek policy. The other 70% have been divested or liquidated as Temasek invested, divested and grew their portfolio to 434 billion Singaporean dollars.
Supplementary. Do government-owned investment funds typically invest in other countries?
Mr Speaker, yes, because they're trying to diversify and get as good a return as possible for the citizens they represent. Let me again refer to just a random example. Temasek. Around half of their portfolio consists of companies and assets outside of Singapore. Wow. In fact, their sovereign wealth fund, GIC, invests in more than 40 countries worldwide. As literate investors know, diversification across countries and industries is essential to reduce risk and protect portfolios from market volatility.
Question number 3, the Honourable Barbara.
Whakalofalahi atu, Mr Speaker.
Question 3, Barbara Edmonds. Honourable Barbara Edmonds.
Thank you. To the Minister of Finance, does she stand by all her statements and actions?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Yes, including the comments I just made about Temasek.
Supplementary. How can she stand by her statement that, quote, costs are under control, that inflation is under control, unquote, when there have been 4 consecutive increases in inflation?
Well, inflation is within the target band. 3 years ago it was 7.3%, it is now 3%. I would put our record on inflation up against that member's any day of the week.
Supplementary. Is a pay offer below the 3% rate of inflation an effective pay cut? If not, why not?
Well, it's not for me to get into the bargaining between the unions. It's not for me to get into the bargaining between the unions and the Public Service Commission.
Supplementary. How does a pay offer for teachers, firefighters and nurses that does not keep up with the cost of living help their families who are struggling with the increasing cost of living?
Oh, Mr Speaker, the government has made generous offers in relation to all of the pay disputes that are currently underway. The other point I would make is, as that member's party and other members have been making repeatedly, and in fact allied with the unions, it is not just about pay. So, for example, one of the issues that has been raised repeatedly over many years in relation to education, for example, is the extra investment required for learning support. The government has come to the table and put a record investment in budget 2025 of over $700 million. And to quote the union's own words, this is not just about pay. We agree.
Supplementary. Does she agree with the Prime Minister that, quote, "We would love to pay everyone more, but for that to happen, we've got to be a much wealthier economy," unquote? If so, would there have been more money for workers had she not handed out pay increases for board directors, $2.9 billion for landlords, and $300 million for the tobacco industry?
That's right.
Okay, sorry. That's just ridiculous. If you didn't like the question being asked from your side of the House, talk to the member away from the general furore of the House. When someone is about to answer a question, hold your tongue until I've at least said one or two words.
Mr. Speaker, to take each of the three stupid assertions in that question in reverse order, the tobacco claim by the member is inaccurate and wrong. In relation to the board directors, if the last government had not appointed boards that ran so many Crown companies, like, to take a random example, Kāinga Ora, so badly, we would not have been put in a position where we had to bring in some commercial expertise to get the books back on track. And in relation to the first part of the question, I always agree with the Prime Minister.
Do you?
Is that it?
Settle down.
Question 4, Rima Nakli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transport and asks, what announcements has he made on the government's Roads of National Significance programme?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, as I outlined to the House yesterday, my apologies, Mr. Speaker, as I outlined to the House yesterday, the government spending $1.2 billion to move the next tranche of the Roads of National Significance to the next phase of development following the board's approval of the investment cases. This is about a long-term transport infrastructure pipeline to help address our infrastructure deficit. And of course, the infrastructure that will be built over time supports growth and creates jobs and opportunities for Kiwis. It's a fantastic day, or was a fantastic day on Monday.
Supplementary. What did the most recent investment cases say about roads of national significance in the Central and Upper North Island?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I invite members to go away and read the investment cases. To take a couple of examples, the Northland Expressway's investment case proves the project will be transformational for the North in the same way that the Waikato Expressway has been transformational for the Waikato. The first section is currently in procurement, and ultimately, if the project is built completely between Auckland and Whangarei, it will reduce travel time by 38 minutes and, of course, reduce deaths and serious injury, which is something that many members are concerned about, by 66%. The East-West Link, Mr. Speaker, is a very important project that I think some members have been familiar with for quite some time. And the Hamilton Southern Links project will unlock over 17,000 new houses, and it's estimated over 7,000 new jobs in this extremely fast-growing area of the Upper North Island.
Supplementary. What did the most recent investment cases say about roads of national significance in the Lower North Island?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was good to see the New Zealand Transport Agency Board endorse investment cases for Petone to Granada and the Cross Valley Link, as well as State Highway 1 Wellington improvements. Petone to Granada is a critical resilience project for the Wellington region. It will take 6,500 vehicles off the most congested section of State Highway 1 and 2 and will reduce travel times between Lower Hutt and Porirua by 23 minutes at peak time. Wow. And after the previous government did not advance the case for Let's Get Wellington Moving, we are committed to delivering meaningful improvements to State Highway 1 through Wellington, including a second Mount Victoria tunnel, a second terrace tunnel, 3-laning Vivian Street so you can no longer park on State Highway 1, Basin Reserve grade separation and widening Ruahine Street and Wellington Road.
Supplementary.
Okay.
What did the most recent investment cases say about the roads of national significance in the South Island?
Mr Speaker, it's good to see the New Zealand Transport Agency Board endorse the investment case into the Hope Bypass, which we may have to rename. State Highway 6 is a vital connection for people and goods, will boost economic growth in Nelson, Tasman, reduce peak journey times through Richmond by at least 10 minutes by 2034. And of course, developments continue on the Belfast to Pegasus and Wood End Bypass road of national significance, with a fast-track application being worked through currently. And of course, I cannot let the moment go without mentioning James Meagher's favourite project, the second Ashburton Bridge.
Question number 5, the Honourable Willow Jean Prime.
Tēnā koe te manga. Whare, my question is to the Minister of Education. Will she be present at the education sector strike protests on 23rd October? If not, why not?
The Honourable Eric Stanford.
Mr Speaker, tomorrow I will be in Wellington, and I do understand that all rallies, planned events and sign-waving events have been called off due to severe weather in Wellington.
Supplementary. Why have over 40,000 educators been forced to take to the streets just to get their minister to listen to their concerns?
Well, Mr Speaker, they're not forced to do anything, and I would like to just say that we have been listening to them, which is why we have delivered the biggest investment in learning support in a generation, more than they did in the last 6 years combined, which is why we've invested in paying for their teacher registration fees, Mr Speaker, which is why we've invested in an Aspiring Principals program, which is why we've invested in a teacher bonding scheme, Mr Speaker, among many, many things we've done to back the sector. But we cannot get further progress unless the unions are back at the table, and children need to be in classrooms learning.
Supplementary. Does she realise that educators have no choice but to strike when she has refused to listen to them, despite open letters signed by hundreds of principals and petitions signed by thousands of concerned teachers in whānau?
Well, Mr Speaker, they do have a choice, and here is an example of a union that did have a choice. The PPCBU, the Primary Principals Collective Bargaining Union, with over 500 members, chose not to strike, chose to be at the bargaining table with the Public Service Commission, chose to be open and transparent, chose to come to a settlement, a good, fair and reasonable settlement, and that is why more and more educators are joining their union day by day because they're sick of the NZEI.
Supplementary. Why does she continue to defer to Sir Brian Roche when the sector is crying out for some engagement with their minister?
Well, Mr Speaker, let me talk to you about engagement with the sector. Today, in fact, I've come directly here from Lower Hutt, where I have been at the Curriculum Roadshow with hundreds of principals and leaders and teachers all in a room to learn about the changes. And on Monday, we did the same thing in Christchurch, fully booked, overflowing, the same thing on Monday. In fact, Mr Speaker, with all of this engagement that's happening with the sector, we can't find a venue big enough to hold them all.
Supplementary. Supplementary.
I texted her.
Just wait. There are far too many conversations going on, particularly while ministers are answering questions, as well as unreasonable amount of barracking across the House. So we'll just have total silence for a moment, and while the question is asked. The Honourable Willow Jean Prime.
What message does she think she sends educators when she is willing to prioritise her roadshow with her friends over meeting with those who are striking?
Well, Mr Speaker, turns out I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends, because that's how many people are turning up to the Curriculum Roadshow to learn about the changes and the reform in education that is going to be raising achievement and closing the education gap in this country, which is more than those guys did in 6 years.
Question question number 6, Chloe Swarbrick.
E te Premier, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
Yes.
Does he stand by his statement in response to our questions yesterday that nurses have safe staffing conditions when Te Whatu Ora's own data showed that 50% of day shifts were understaffed in 16 districts over 10 months last year in our hospitals?
Well, I'm incredibly proud of what this government's doing to improve the working environment for nurses. The fact that in less than 2 years we've added 2,100 extra nurses into Health New Zealand is a really good thing. And the fact that we've made consistent efforts and investments in the healthcare system, $17 billion in our first budget, up another 7% in our second budget, that's all good stuff.
Does he stand by his statement that nurses have safe working conditions when nurses report that emergency departments are currently, under his government's hiring freeze, so short-staffed that some patients who soil themselves are left lying for hours in their own excrement because staff do not have time to help?
Well, in answer to the first part of the question, there is no hiring freeze, but what I'm proud about with this government is that we've got crystal clear on what we expect the healthcare system to deliver for patients, and that is less wait times in emergency departments, immunisation rates for under twos, faster access to first specialist appointments, elective surgeries, and importantly making sure that we are delivering for patients and putting them at the heart of everything we do. And it's been good to see some encouraging turnaround. I'm sure all members of this House would thank the Minister of Health for the good work that he's doing in trying to get those wait lists run down.
Is he concerned that neonatal wards across Auckland, Whangarei, Christchurch, Palmerston North and Tauranga hospitals were understaffed for more than a third of the shifts in the first half of this year? And if so, what impact does he think that these unsafe working conditions have on parents and newborns?
Well, I'm just very proud of the progress that we've taken since the departure of a Labour Greens government, that clearly we have put more money in than the history of New Zealand. We have put more workforce into the healthcare system. We have good clarity on targets, and we now expect delivery from Health New Zealand to support patients.
Will the Prime Minister commit to empowering government negotiators to turn up to the bargaining table equipped with the resources necessary to meet the actual real-world need to fix our education and healthcare systems?
Well, I'm proud of what we're doing and improving on our health and education systems given the mess that we inherited from the last lot. But I just say we are ready 24/7, ready to go. So why don't we actually cancel the strike tomorrow and actually go to the bargaining table tomorrow?
Does the Prime Minister understand that in order for the bargaining to actually work, the government needs to empower its negotiators to actually turn up, capable of offering the resources necessary to meet the need in our education and healthcare systems?
Absolutely, and that's why we're ready to go 24/7. The bottom line is that the unions are not coming in and talking to a minister about the state of Palestine, not being prepared to have a conversation about professional development or teacher-only days in the 12 weeks of school holidays that happens, going in as a PPTA organisation and not taking a new deal out to the members, actually rejecting binding arbitration from senior doctors. All of that says it's politically motivated, they're not serious, they don't care about the parents, the kids or the patients. We do. Get to the bargaining table, simple as.
I would just point out to the person who was questioning by way of interjection, particular action, someone else, you were referring to me, which is not at all appropriate. And wildly inaccurate, I might also say. Question 7, Tom Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Justice. How is the government progressing with its plan to restore law and order?
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government's making good progress on its plan to restore law and order. We've committed to restoring consequences for crime and to keep those who cause the most harm in our society off the streets for longer, to put victims back at the centre of the Justice Centre. I could point to progress made on our ambitious target to see 20,000 fewer victims of serious violent crime by 2029, and the most recent data released to the 12-month to May show that we're 29,000 fewer victims than when we came into government, 9,000 ahead of our target. That is still too many victims, and we've got a lot more work to do, but the plan that we have is working.
Supplementary, what updates can he provide on the government's recovery of court fines?
Well, Mr. Speaker, our trial of clamping and seizing cars of people who have not paid their court fines and reparations began in July, set to expand after it achieved more than 225,000 in fines in the seizure of 115 vehicles in a 3-month period. Bailiffs scanned more than 70,000 number plates and identified 982 with overdue court fines and reparations. Of those, 278 paid on the spot, which was good. 115 didn't and had their cars seized, and 16 of those have already been sold in auction, with another 52 on the way. Mr. Speaker, it's all about ensuring that people do what they're supposed to do and that there are real consequences of a crime.
What other actions is the government taking to progress its plan to restore law and order?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as part of our Q4 plan, before the end of the year, we'll introduce legislation to strengthen consequences for crime in the Crimes Act, including new citizens' arrest powers, a raft of coalition commitments, as well as to pass legislation to make stalking an illegal and jailable offence. A lot of talk about that over many years, but this government will do it before the end of the year. The government's also taking policy decisions on options to provide more tools to address the rise in antisocial behaviour that continues to be an issue in places like Auckland's CBD. We want Kiwis and visitors to this country from overseas to feel safe and welcome on Queen Street and in our other town centres.
What updates can he provide on the government's youth offending reduction target?
Well, Mr. Speaker, alongside our target to reduce the number of victims of serious crime, we've also got a target led by Minister Chore to reduce the number of children and young people with serious and persistent offending by 15%, which the good news is that we have achieved as a government already. Much more to do, but if you're a victim of crime, especially if you're a victim of violent crime, it doesn't matter how old the offender is, you and your family still suffer the consequences, and that's why it is so important that we deal more effectively with youth crime, which was out of control in a couple of years ago, and good progress has been made.
Question number 8, Camilla Bellich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for the Public Service, does she stand by her statement, an efficient, professional and politically neutral public service is essential?
The Honourable James Meagher.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for the Public Service, yes.
Supplementary. Was she or her office consulted before the Public Service Commission approved taxpayer-funded ads about the strike on Thursday, and were they involved in the content, timing or authorisation?
I'm not aware of the details, but I'm aware that the decision was the Commissioner's to make.
Did the Minister for the Public Service see the ads before they were published?
On behalf of the Minister, I can't answer that question. Sorry. Well, I'm not aware whether the Minister was.
Does she think it is in good faith to spend public money on messaging that attacks the bargaining position of doctors, nurses, and teachers?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for the Public Service, that's not what the ads did. The ads clarified the information about the offers on the table and were a perfectly valid way of drawing attention to the enormous disruption being caused to families, to children and to patients by the ongoing strikes. And it reiterates the message that if we really want to get a resolution, get round the bargaining table and settle these disputes.
Does she still stand by her claim that the strike is politically motivated? And if so, how is her own decision to attack the bargaining position of doctors, nurses and teachers not itself politically motivated?
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Question number 9, Andy Foster.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Associate Minister of Police and asks, what recent reports has she seen about organised crime?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Casey Costello.
Last Friday, the Ministerial Advisory Group on Transnational Serious and Organised Crime published their final report, Lead Boldly, Act Decisively. The advisory group was tasked with assessing the transnational organised crime landscape in New Zealand and for proposing bold solutions, and I would like to thank them for their hard work. Their report highlights a stark reality that transnational serious organised crime is a major threat to New Zealand's national security. Our current operational response is strong, but across government there is scope for a more cohesive approach supported by the private sector and the public.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. What makes responding to transnational organised crime so challenging?
Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, there are many reasons, but I'd like to focus on two. Organised crime groups operate at the pace of technology, while governments are constrained to operate at the pace of law. Things like encrypted devices and artificial intelligence expand criminal capabilities and allow organised crime groups to connect, and we're seeing cartels and groups operating and growing at scale. Drugs is the most noted commodity, and they form another major challenge because organised crime is commodity agnostic. Organised crime will operate wherever money can be made, whether it is drugs, people trafficking, money laundering, financial scams or child exploitation. They are sophisticated and will always target the weakest link in our defences. However, the Ministry Advisory Group has been clear that the challenges of transnational organised crime present are not insurmountable and have done an excellent job to recommend solutions.
Supplementary. What proposals have the Ministerial Advisory Group made?
Mr Speaker, I won't touch on all the group's recommendations because they are numerous and detailed, but instead I'd like to speak to their focus, which has been on four key themes. The first is creating cohesion and accountability across government. The second is about targeting cash flows. The third is our role in supporting our Pacific neighbours. And finally, the advisory group has highlighted the need to strengthen our communities and build resilience to organised crime.
Supplementary. Given the wide-ranging recommendations of the Ministerial Advisory Group, are we currently failing in the fight against organised crime?
Mr Speaker, no. Like many countries, we are not winning, but we certainly are not failing. As I stated in my response to the primary question, operational agencies like police and customs are doing great work, and we're seeing the results of that excellence regularly. We're seizing record levels of drugs. In the last financial year, more than 9 tonnes of illicit drugs were stopped from entering New Zealand. We're also stopping illicit tobacco and child exploitation material with increasing frequency and at increasing scale. We know we need to keep lifting our game in response to the threat proposed, and we're not sitting on our hands. We've been focused on finding solutions and improving operational performance, and that focus will continue. The Ministerial Advisory Group report provides a bold vision and presents an opportunity to drive further innovation and effectiveness in how we respond to organised crime.
Question number 10, Amonga Lydia Solsini.
Whakalawhalahia to Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Internal Affairs, is she confident that firefighters have the appliances and equipment they need to keep them safe on the job? If so, why?
The Honourable David Seymour.
On behalf of the Minister of Internal Affairs, yes. And I'm sure that the Minister would want me to say that she's incredibly proud of the efforts that New Zealand's firefighters make. They are some of the most trusted New Zealanders, some of the only New Zealanders who have a job of going into dangerous environments deliberately. And from my experience of visiting fire stations, absolute backbones, great New Zealanders. We're confident that they have the equipment in spite of a long legacy of decay. Since the merger of the voluntary and professional fire services in 2017, there has been a long period of time where the rate of replacement of fire engines has not kept up in such a way that it's kept the average age down. In the last 2 years, an asset management plan has been put in place for the first time, which is quite a shocking revelation, but it's only been done in the last 2 years. At the same time, $20 to $25 million per year is being invested in new fire trucks. Currently, 78 are on order, including 5 aerial appliances. However, they tend to take 18 to 24 months to be delivered. So, Mr Speaker, we are grateful for our firefighters. We are confident that they're safe, but we acknowledge historic problems that we are resolving.
Now,
Supplementary.
I would assume that that was such a comprehensive answer that the rest of it can be quite concise. That was an exceptionally long answer.
But it was very detailed.
Well, there was the sort of detail that probably is just a little bit more than might have been expected in the House.
I try and exceed expectations,
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
Just a moment.
Does she agree with the Professional Firefighters Union that, quote, FENZ is driving emergency response into the ground with the failing fire appliances, unsafe stations, refusal to increase staffing, unquote? If not, why not?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Internal Affairs, I'm sure that a Labor member will realise that red things aren't always reliable. However, there is a commitment, as I have mentioned, to upgrade the fire appliance fleet, which is underway in order to address those concerns.
Supplementary. Does she agree with Brooke Van Velden that all parties need to get around the bargaining table? If so, why has FENZ failed to front up for bargaining?
Mr. Speaker, we do agree with that, and FENZ, through the Public Service Commission, is certainly being represented. Bargaining is available. It's simply a question of the firefighters turning up.
Supplementary. Why should firefighters accept a pay offer that is a pay cut in real terms?
Mr. Speaker, the precise negotiations are being handled by the Public Service Commission, but I would make the point that, like all public service jobs, it is New Zealanders who have to pay for them, overwhelmingly in the case of fire, through levies put on people's home insurance. So it is easy in opposition to say that you think everybody should be paid more. However, it is also true that in these negotiations there are two sides that must be represented, and one of those are the New Zealanders who pay the cost.
Supplementary. Is the Professional Firefighters Union correct that the, quote, job of a firefighter is now more dangerous than it was in the 1990s, unquote? And if so, will she instruct FENZ to make a real, sensible offer to ensure our firefighters are safe at work?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, we don't have, or at least I'm not aware on behalf of the Minister of Internal Affairs, of a comparison that would validate or invalidate that comparison with the 1990s. What I do know is that FENZ is extremely wary of the dangers that firefighters faced. As I mentioned in my initial answer, we recognise that they are the only group of New Zealanders, or one of the few, who are required to go into dangerous environments as part of their work. Nonetheless, it's not true that money makes up for danger. We must take health and safety as a priority, perhaps above all else.
Question number 11, Ricardo Mendes March.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health. Does he agree with the Prime Minister that nurses have safe working conditions? If so, why?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Simeon Brown.
Yes, I do agree with the Prime Minister. Since coming into office, this government has added around 2,000 more nurses to the public health system compared to 2023, alongside hundreds of additional doctors. That's backed by a record additional $16.68 billion investment in health over 3 budgets, including initiatives focused on improving workplace safety and reducing wait lists for patients. Health New Zealand is committed to safe care. That's why we're growing the health workforce and holding the system accountable through clear health targets so patients get the care they need when they need it.
Do current staffing levels in our hospital provide for safe working conditions? If so, how?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we have continued to increase the number of nurses working in our health system, around 2,000 more nurses compared to 2023, alongside hundreds of additional doctors. We'll continue to focus on our frontline service delivery and reducing wait lists for patients. And I say to the member, one of the biggest risks in our health system is the waiting times for patients, and those wait lists are only going to increase with tomorrow's strikes.
What does he say to Ali, a registered nurse, who said, quote, I am very upset and shocked by the Prime Minister stating we have safe working conditions. Our wards are critically understaffed. patients are not receiving the care they need and deserve, end quote.
Well, I say to that individual that this government is continuing to invest in more nursing staff in our hospitals, around 2,000 more nurses in the public health system compared to the Labor Greens government, which we inherited the challenges of our health system from. We are focused on frontline service delivery while they were focused on restructuring bureaucracy.
How is correct? Nurses across the country who are telling us that they do not have safe working conditions, or the Prime Minister who said that nurses have safe working conditions?
Well, the facts speak for themselves, and the facts are that there are more nurses working at Health New Zealand today than under the Labor Greens coalition, which was more focused on restructuring our health system during a pandemic. We're focused on health delivery. They were focused on rearranging bureaucracy.
Supplementary. Why is he not recognising that nurses are telling us across the country that they're not experiencing safe working conditions as a result of current understaffing?
Well, there's a range of things that this government is doing to invest in our nursing workforce, to invest in delivery for patients. And under this government, the number of nurses working at Health New Zealand has increased. They are providing quality care. They do an incredible job for our patients. Quality safety measures are stable or improving over the past 5 years. We're investing in regular training for staff. We're investing in security in our emergency departments. We're continuing to invest in our nursing workforce and in our medical workforces. And we've also put health targets in place which show that we are starting to see progress after the last government allowed wait lists to balloon whilst they fiddled with the bureaucracy. We're focused on patients, they're focused on bureaucracy.
Question number 12, Dr. Carlos Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to Minister for Mental Health. What recent announcements has he made on rolling out new mental health services in emergency departments?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Matt Dusey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our mental health plan is focused on delivering results, faster access to support, more frontline workers and a better crisis response. Recently, I announced the introduction of peer support workers in North Shore Emergency Department, completing the rollout of the service across all 3 major Auckland hospitals, alongside Dunedin, Christchurch, Wellington and Waikato hospitals. For anyone in mental health crisis, arriving as a busy emergency department can be overwhelming. Having a peer support specialist who understands what they're going through can make a real difference. No matter where you live, this government is committed to ensuring that timely support is there.
Supplementary. Why are peer support workers part of government plans to improve crisis response in mental health?
Mr. Speaker, I've always been open that one of the biggest barriers to timely mental health support in New Zealand is too many workforce vacancies. Peer support specialists are available to listen, share their experience and provide timely support. They can also link people to community mental health services, resulting in better outcomes once they leave hospital. Whether your child, a friend or a family member is reaching out for support, we're committed to ensuring support is there.
Supplementary. What feedback has the Minister received about the impact of peer support workers?
Mr. Speaker, one of my top priorities is strengthening prevention and early intervention. The feedback from hospitals with peer support workers has been very positive. A peer support worker in Wellington told me how surreal it was to be helping others in the same emergency department they came through in crisis a few years earlier. In Dunedin, a former patient told me on the worst day of her life, this is exactly the type of service she wishes she had when she was struggling. To deliver a better crisis response, we want to ensure there is someone to call, somewhere to respond and somewhere to go.
Supplementary. Where else are peer support workers being used to improve mental health services?
Mr. Speaker, our mental health plan is working. We are delivering, reducing wait times and increasing the workforce. Since coming into government, the peer support lived experience workforce has grown by almost 100%. Not only are we rolling out peer support workers in emergency departments, but also in crisis recovery cafes, eating disorder services, and to help young people with FASD. When someone takes a step of reaching out for support, workforce should never be a barrier.
Supplementary question, Hana Rawhiti Maipi Clark.
Supplementary. Will the Minister investigate the mental health crisis in Thames following a serious mental health incident that was brought to his attention by a local mental health rangatira in Hauraki earlier this Monday?
Mr. Speaker, I think it's always important that we respond to people who lay some serious concerns about the mental health system. As the Mental Health Minister, how I hold myself to account, and this government does, is setting New Zealand's first mental health targets. For the first time in New Zealand, we can use the data to go into communities around New Zealand and understand the level of access to those timely support. That will get rid of the postcode lottery for mental health in New Zealand.
Supplementary. How will his new announcements on mental health services address the lack of coordination and unwillingness of public services and agencies in Hauraki to intervene in serious incidents?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that member raises a significant point. New Zealanders' experience traditionally of the mental health system is one of fragmentation, and actually it takes too long to be seen. That's why this function of this government is to join up the mental health system and provide faster access to support. That is why we are now able to go back to the 20 health districts, understand the performance of each of those areas and ensure they deliver a level of services Kiwis should expect in mental health. 1 week for primary mental health and addiction support, 3 weeks for specialist mental health and addiction support.
That concludes oral questions. As members, a point of order, the Honourable David Seymour.
Speaker, I seek leave to make a personal explanation to correct an answer to a question.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? Appears to be none.
Mr. Speaker, in my answer to question 10, I suggested that the PSC was negotiating on behalf of FENZ. That is in fact not true. FENZ is negotiating on behalf of FENZ.
Thank you for that clarification. As members leave the House over the next 30 seconds, please do so quickly, quietly, and then we'll call on the general debate. Quickly, quietly, without any discussions in the aisles. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of miscellaneous business?